for me, it seems to have grave implications. I mean, we're looking at an independent INEC, so to speak.
Yep.
If we say we're cutting deals, so to speak, does it not also question the integrity of our electoral commission?
No, it does. That's how I'm saying, on the whole, it's not the best of news. Of course, you also have to really interrogate some of the facts, because we're also living witnesses to where some elections took place in this country. I mean, you know, in Edo State, Comrade Shomoli won election in a free and fair contest. I mean, you know, first, he presided over, the same Obasanjo presided over an election that was inconclusive in Edo. I mean, what I'm talking about here is that the courts had reversed the so-called, you know, victory of PDP. You know the story very well. And later on, that election was conducted under Obasanjo. He didn't preside over the best of election either, you know, in any respect. And it were a series of elections that were that have been done over that were seen to be free and fair. And I'm talking of the case of Edo in particular. I mean, so it was completely mischievous on his part to say it was part of a deal that were the victory in Edo.
What about the rest of the three?
No, you know, Ondo, the same thing. You know, everybody, I mean, we doesn't have to say that. We are there, living witness to this contestation. Of course, there may be some, individual preferences upstairs. But I'm talking of the one we see, where vote counted, people voted. And in the case of Edo, you know, 18 over 18 for the Cuban governor. You know, do the same thing. It was quite conclusive there. And in the case of Ekiti, you know, it was reversal of through court process.
You know, I'm happy with
that. So what I'm trying to say here is that, so you also have to weigh the credibility of some of the assumptions he put on the table. But what I'm saying, even where all the issues they had raised here, they were things that Nigerians had talked about for and against. And I'm saying on the whole,
again,
that's why I don't want us to go into
when they talked about it, well, it didn't get much bite the way it is getting now, because if you look at that particular letter, it was dated December 2nd.
Yeah.
And now we're getting to hear all of the details, because we've always talked about oil theft. Yeah. We've always talked about so many things. And people have also complained once upon a time that, look, you don't give the nation's oil and waterways to some people to manage when you have your own navy.
Yeah.
Now, for the very first time, we're getting to see all of this same street talk, barbershop talk.
No, they were not street talk. I can't say that.
So now we're getting to see. So that is why when you say,
yes,
well, these are things that we have known before now, some would disagree and say, no, but now that it's coming from former president, it is much more serious than we had thought.
Yeah, I mean, it legitimizes some of those concerns which Nigerians have talked about, being a former head of state. And a principal player who is until recently was the chairman of BOT that presided over some of these sordid atrocities he talked about. But my major problem, and that's why I started from my individual level, that I feel quite diminished as a Nigerian, because I'm accepting responsibility as a Nigerian that we're part of these stories. But he doesn't. Obasanjo doesn't. And that's the danger. You know, he comes out as if it's, others were doing this, which we know very well, but what of his own responsibility to it? And I'm raising this point. Don't also forget that not just long ago, early this year, Obasanjo was in Ibadan, where he was agonizing that, almost cursing Nigerians for not recognizing what he called their leaders. You know, that we couldn't produce good leaders and all sorts. And he was blaming Nigeria and rather blaming leaders who did not deliver for us to do proper recognition. I mean, today the whole world stands still for Nelson Mandela. Now, but my reaction to that was that, as terrible as the stories of Nigerians were, and I said so that time in my reaction to him, and I said that, wait, maybe he needs to look around. Yes, we have told despair, but there's stories of hope. That Ibadan, where he wasn't the same way it was when he was in office. Because you want to tell me the urban renewal now under Ajimabi, everybody acknowledged that. That's some progress being done. No, I said, if he condemn all the young leaders.
I understand that.
But all the young leaders that they can't deliver like the whole.
Isn't that, Mr. Ramo, a moment here, sorry. Isn't that why we're where we are this day? Because every time and any time anyone tries to bring up an issue, we try to look at the person's own track record instead of facing that particular matter. For instance, let's talk about Mr. Abata's response, saying that, well, it was deliberately leaked. And one wonders, what about the issue about the bulletproof and so many other stories that have leaked? Are we saying that these people actually deliberately brought out their documents?
Until 3 days ago, the Speaker of the House of Rep, Aminu Tambuwa, made a much more also big headline, coming from his position of office to indeed the presidency of shielding corruption. And the case of the Amokas featured very well in it. So I'm saying that the issue of Obasanjo raised had been in public domain. What increased his nose level is his profile, which is quite real. And I'm saying either way, these stories, and I think the presidency has the responsibility to be accountable, and they must respond to all these allegations. As the case, just like they must respond to all allegations most Nigerians have raised on oil theft, on the issue of corruption, on the issue of, a lot of these acrimonies that are really splitting the country apart. And for me, what is so painful about these issues is that Nigerians don't feature in this contestation, because it's not about light, it's not about electricity, it's not about jobs. I mean, with all these leaders we all have, both including the presidency, including former head of state, 36 state governors, Nigeria presided over closure of university for 6 months. We are not in a state of war. Even during the Civil War, many universities were working, were teaching. Whatever the reason, whether the blame is federal, it's the unions and co, the point is that we all watch while university closed down.
So you say,
and for me,
so you're saying all of this is it's not about the people.
Yeah, it's not about the people. That's the point I'm raising. I'm saying it's time for people, Nigerians have said, to change the narrative.
It will seem that.
And Nigerians have also said as much as it, maybe it's time for us to walk our talk. Instead of organizing, we need to organize.
Mr. Aramo, it will seem
and
that
take our feet to our hands.
We're still at the basic level of whether or not we want to stay together as a people.
No.
I mean, what this letter, it also questions the North-South divide, the Muslim-Christian divide, and it would seem that its major emphasis is on unity and sustaining this country as one.
No.
Are we still at that level?
No.
Or we've moved beyond that?
I'm saying that we're even using these terms. Mokwe shows how we have degenerated. Again, I have to return back to Mandela. I mean, one of the reported last interview he did was that he even heard that Nigeria, you have to be a Muslim or Christian before you become president. If you that's not the language of Nigerians. We never knew this. And I think this is one of the lowest level under Jonathan presidency, in which the narratives are moved to ethnicity, religion. We never knew this. I live with this thought, and it's going to be related to Obasanjo in particular. His boss, Murtala Mohammed, was killed on a Friday on the way to Jumat. Are you listening to me? 1975. A Muslim. And possibly, he was killed by officers who are certainly, if you are looking for religious profiling, was not a Muslim. On a Friday, Nigeria moved on. Nobody talk of religion. He was succeeded by Christian Obasanjo. Nobody even look at that. That was Nigeria, in which we look at the issues. The whole country wept. They all missed a former head of state, and we moved on. You can imagine that to have happened today.
How did it change?
No. It changed because we have abandoned development and governance for selfish primordial issues. Ourselves. And then everybody shielded himself with his own ethnicity, his own ethnic groups. He was among those people who also promoted the religious issue in the presidency, always doing the chapel reading from the Bible, and also president must preside over.
So you seem to be.
I'm saying president must preside over. It's not in our constitution whether you're a Muslim or Christian. It talks of citizenship. And we have to return to those narratives.
Back to Mandela. Back to Mandela. I want, because you just raised something quite interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of people never knew that he was even a Christian.
In fact, you can't ask for his profiling.
Because he never brought his religion.
No, at all. Far from it. And I want to talk back to that issue, because for me, what brought me to this today is to amplify those virtues of Nelson Mandela. And I feel a bit quite sad that we could even talk of those virtues of some Nigerian leaders who are serving, because they contributed to his liberation. Now, Mandela shows that leadership is about those soft issues. Nobody has talked of how many bridges he had built, roads. Those were already given. They talk of sacrifices, selflessness, forgiveness, reconciliation, unity. I mean, Mandela says so that he has struggled all his life for the African people. He has fought against black domination as well as white domination. He didn't differentiate the two. I mean, if Mandela could bring all races together, white, black, so-called colored, it's sad that in Nigeria we are returning back to our village. I always feel diminished when I see Nigerian leaders in particular, who without bigger Nigeria, nobody will have known them. Some are even senior advocates of Nigeria. They carry the title, then they become senior advocates of their villages. They become ethnic champion. Check our constitution. You talk of citizenship. Nobody say you're a Muslim or a Christian. So what I'm saying here is, I think it's time for us to really, am I communicating here, to really bring those virtues to the table. And the last one that is of interest to me, I think all these are leaders. It's time for them to apologize for Nigeria. And if they don't, we need to extort apology from them. And through resistance. I'm saying so. I say so because Mandela, if he were to be a Catholic, by now he would have been canonized as a saint. Given the way people presented. But when he was alive, he kept on saying, no, I was never a Messiah. I wasn't a saint. I was just one among equals. Mandela, don't also forget, was produced by organization. He was a principal man, a member of African National Congress. He was just one among equals. You are talking of the Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, who brought him even to the struggle. In fact, when he was in prison, almost about 5 years before he was released, they were asking me already preparing for leadership. He said, no, he wouldn't be president. They should rather call Walter Sisulu because he brought him to this. He was so humble. It's only that now we have increased his visibility because he's like a symbol of the struggle. But there are other people like that. Now, he raised very important point, which also demonstrated by his life, that in spite of what he has achieved, there are some areas that he also has some errors.
Mr. Remo, if I may come in here, how do we bring those virtues of Mandela to bear now? Because some will tell you that the circumstances around us are not going to help to bring about those virtues. How do we get that to work?
No, wait.
Especially when you say we need to change the narrative.
First you need to even know what the virtues are. That's why I'm bringing the issue of... Because you know this grandstanding between the Jonathan, OBJ, and possibly, you know them. They will join later. IBB, there was the time IBB and OBJ were engaging in diatribes on their bad day. It's not the first time, Not about electricity or light that affect me and you. We haven't had any hot talk about closure of universities under them. But the point I'm raising here is that Mandela shows that even where he was failing, he had cause to apologize. I'll give you an example. He was in Kenya, Zambia, during the elections in 1990s. And he went there to campaign, for his friend. I'm talking of Kenneth Kaunda, But he got the mood wrong of the Zambia because they already tired of Kaunda, and they had voted him. He went back at inauguration to apologize to the Zambia that he got it wrong. Why should he have meddled into affairs of Zambia? Because he now realized that, okay, Kaunda supported him, but he supported him among other Zambians who supported him. So he had no cause to take partisan position. And I can give you 2 or 3 examples like that. Now, our leaders have to apologize.
I think we'll just,
what I want from this letter,
one more so that we can...
what I want from this letter is that I think it's also time there can be moving forward for Nigeria if our leaders themselves cannot apologize even for their misdeeds. And for me, something close to this recently is what Comrade Adams did in Edo. The unfortunate encounter he had with this widow. You can have the feeling, but he quickly apologized and moved on and showed that reconciliation. Now, what we want to demand from these our leaders is for the issue of all theft, and you must put an end to it, massive corruption, and the fact that we must have free and fair election to produce, because Mandela is we talking about, it's a product of free and fair election.
Well,
but it cannot come if we don't accept our responsibility and we don't even accept apology for it.
I'm really afraid we have to end it here.
Thank you.
We would like to thank you so very much for coming on the program. Issa Remo is the Vice President, Nigerian Labour Congress.